kids, so help them read, learn, grow. Let's show them how much fun it is to read, learn, grow. So parents, you play your part. First and foremost, reading from so young is advantageous. Link with the teachers, working hand in hand is a must. Just 10 minutes of your child reading to you is a plus. Get fun books, make reading priority. When children read, they are able to learn, and the more they learn, the more they grow. So parents help the kids read, learn, grow. Reading is fun, kids have to know. Read, learn, grow. The children are the future, help them read, learn, grow. So parents, you play your part.
This message is brought to you by the OECS USAID Early Learners Program, funded by United States Agency for International Development. For more information, log on to www.oecs.org/ELP.
Hello and hi.
Hello everyone, I am Shakel Bob. I am a former Miss Pitani, a former Miss Rural SVG and Miss SVG contestant and runner-up. I'm a lawyer by profession, but a pageant lover at heart. Do not let the negatives prey on your mind, because a stitch in time saves 9. So, it's COVID vaccination time. Get vaccinated today to reduce the impact of COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And I urge you, get vaccinated. It is safe and it is effective. Stop the spread, help the fight, and make the choice that is right. And let us unite and do the thing right.
Good evening and welcome to Round Table Talk. This is the first edition for the year 2022. We were on a bit of a hiatus, but we are back and it really does feel good to be back. It's the month of April, and as everyone may know, the La Soufrière volcano erupted on April 9 last year. All month long, we will be talking with some of the main players, reflecting and analyzing on the eruption of the La Soufrière. To start off the talk, we have, of course, Prime Minister Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves, who steered the ship during the period of crisis as the minister with responsibility for disaster management and all things disaster related in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and as chairman of the Emergency Council. Prime Minister, 3 days from now, the first anniversary of the 2021 eruption of the La Soufrière volcano will happen. Take us back to that day, 3 years ago almost, when you got that call from Professor Robertson that it was time for you to make that call to call the forces to evacuate and for us to get ready for an eruption, an effusive eruption. Tell us, what exactly were you thinking when you got that call?
Well, there were actually 3 calls that day. From late 2020, the Seismic Research Center and our own monitoring unit here, naturally working together as one, the Soufrière Monitoring Unit, reported enhanced seismic activity, but nothing was so serious as to report to the public. Because when you monitor volcanoes, sometimes you would see heightened activities, you look at them very closely, and the experts do the analysis, not yet necessarily for public information. And that continued into the early period of 2021. But as the matters became heightened, I used to speak with Richie Robinson every morning, and also Michelle Forbes, head of NEMO. Richie, of course, Dr. Robertson is the one who was leading the team from the Seismic Research Center at the University of the West Indies in Trinidad. And that particular morning of the Thursday the 8th, Michelle called me, Michelle Forbes, sometime after 5 o'clock the morning, and said to me that there's some real serious elevations in the readings, and that Richie was quite concerned and he wants to talk to me in some detail. So I immediately called him, and as a result of the report that I got from him, I asked him if it was time yet to go to the public to order the evacuation. He said no, but you can talk in a manner which suggests a kind of a pre-notification without doing a pre-notification, to talk about, you know, that there are increased challenges. And then by about midday, 1 o'clock thereabouts, as I recall it, he called me and said, look, you have to do a pre-notification now. And then a little later, which is I think the one you're talking about, the call you're talking about, when you would have seen me get a particular call, he said, I think you need to give the evacuation order now under the NEMO Act. So I made the arrangements with the press secretary to get all the media houses in order and for us to hook up together. And I gave that notification sometime around 4:30 or thereabouts, I think, the afternoon. And I was very calm, because it doesn't do anybody any good for me not to be calm. I'm the Prime Minister, I'm the Minister responsible for disaster preparedness, disaster management, and I know that we were in for a rough ride, because at that time, when I made the call, Richie Robertson had said to me that sometime within the next 24 hours, that the sulfur was going to erupt. And of course, the eruption took place the morning of the 9th, Friday the 9th of April 2021. But we were pretty well organized. Transportation systems, shelters, we had been doing training, we have been putting the pieces together. But of course, even though you do all the simulations and you put the pieces together, when the actual thing happens, you would find hiccups, and you have to improvise. And there were several hiccups.
What was your immediate challenge at that particular time?
Well, we wanted to make sure that all the transportations, which we had hitherto organized, to gather at particular points, and we had been providing the information for some time, because there was an overall national plan. In Georgetown, for instance, you gather at this particular spot. In Chile, you gather up in Sandy Bay, in Oya, in Fancy, different places. Unfortunately, some of the buses were late because they were taking the last set of their regular transport out of town, or wherever they were going. And a simple matter that some of them had not been fully prepared with making sure that their tank was full during the course of the day as I was making the announcements. Some were a little lackadaisical. So you find that some say, but we don't have enough gas to go down back into town and come back. So I had to get Lolly gas station at Montyoung to open later than usual, and to be providing gasoline and make the necessary records, and we had somebody doing the checks and the like. Thank God the evacuation went quite well. There were a lot of individual transportation, and on the leeward side especially, from Chateau Belair, we had boats, and that made that movement much easier. We had built the jetty at Chateaubelair, which was a big plus. And then, of course, we had additional Coast Guard facilities, including the Captain Humelsack, the big vessel which we had purchased for $18 million. And then we had the facility at Oya, the fishing complex which we had built in partnership with the Taiwanese. And we were able to have smaller vessels, Coast Guard vessels, go at that point, not only on that day when we evacuated, but subsequently, to pick up persons who for one reason or the other didn't evacuate at that time. We also used the Medivac vessel up at the Oya area. But the shelters were pretty well organized, some more than others, naturally, depending on the level of local leadership. But the shelters were opened. We had supplies, and we had the mattresses, we had cots, all the blankets, all what was required. Now,
Before we take our first break, I want to ask you, how did the COVID-19 challenge impact all of these preparations and initiating?
That was a serious problem, because you have 87 shelters, and people are also going into homes, but the shelters, some shelters had 200 and something persons, 300 at that particular point in time. Then we had people in hotels and guest houses. And COVID was raging. And the Ministry of Health, I had to put systems in place. And the CMO, Dr. Keza Beach, and the Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Duncan, and their respective teams of doctors and nurses were checking all the shelters, and people had been trained to address this. Shelter managers and volunteers and the like. Issues relating to masks, and those who had symptoms, to isolate them and get them tested. And of course, some people were reluctant, but we got it right far more times than we didn't get it right with matters like those. But that was throughout a very important matter, because every single day the health checks were made, including all the public health checks, inclusive of the COVID situation.
Okay, we'll take our first break, and when we come back, we'll talk about some of the challenges with actually managing this crisis over the last year, and where exactly we are, where that is concerned at the moment. Back in just a moment.
My name is Ruth Stevens, and I'm the owner of Hotel Alexandrina. Currently, most of the hotels are empty. The cruise ship berth is vacant. The airport almost shut down. And we as Vincentians cannot get back to the new normal until most of the Vincentians take the vaccination. We want to improve our economy, and the only way we can do that is to get Vincentians to take the vaccine. I have taken it, and I'm fine.
And do not procrastinate, but rather let us vaccinate. Hi.
Hi, I'm Kim Halvish, one of the managing directors of Paradise Beach Hotel and Fantasy Tours. I'm also the president of the St. Vincent and Grenadines Hotel and Tourism Association. Today I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my vaccine experience. I had it 3 weeks ago and I was one of the fortunate ones. There was a little soreness at the vaccination site for 1 day and I felt a little weak during the night of the same day I took the vaccine, and the next morning I was fine. So I'm encouraging everyone to get on board and get vaccinated because that's the only way our hospitality industry will open. And we have been suffering for over a year. It's been really hard for us. So I was ready to be first in line to get the vaccine and to get the ball moving. It's inevitable where in order to get back to business as usual, we'll all need to be vaccinated.
In our place and do not procrastinate, but rather let us vaccinate. Get vaccinated today.
Welcome back. Prime Minister, if you didn't know that there was a volcanic eruption about a year ago, many people probably would not believe that this in fact happened. We seem to have gone back to normalcy. How did we get here, and what exactly is the status when we talk about being back in a state of normalcy?
Okay. If I before I come to that, there's a very important question to describe what we have been doing and what we are to do. What we have done yesterday, what we're doing today, and what we have to do tomorrow. Bear this in mind, Teresa. We evacuated 1/5 of the population, 20,000. In all those shelters and private homes and guest houses and hotels and the like. Not one person got injured. Not one person died. Compared to what happened in 1902, 2,000 persons died. In fact, people were in the fields, both on the windward and the leeward side, on the plantations when Soufriere blew. There was not advance notice, other than what people saw with their own eyes, that steam was coming out now, and thought that something was imminent. And bear this in mind too. The volcanic eruption in 1902 was, in category terms, if you were to put them, as I put category hurricanes, a 3 to 4, as distinct from a 5 in 2021 on the explosivity index. 2021 was far more serious volcano than that of 1902, and certainly far more than that of 1979. So that's one comparison which we make going back in our own country. Around the same time as Soufriere blew, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a volcano on the outskirts of a town called Goma. Very populous town. People were dying, getting injured, and evacuated before the authorities say that there was a volcanic eruption. So I take you back in St. Vincent historically, over 100 years, and I take you contemporarily to a country in Africa and what happened there. And I take you now to the great United States of America, where you are currently, where you are beaming this, we are talking together. This technology is wonderful, the Zoom. You remember Katrina, the hurricane in New Orleans? A lot of people died. But in addition to the deaths and the injuries, you would recall that a couple thousand persons were put into a big stadium. They were there for 36 hours or so, without food and water and proper facilities and bedding and cots and so on. And that's a very wealthy country. You remember you saw the images. People were saying it's because the bulk of those persons who were put there were black people. You remember all that discussion which was going on? The fact of the matter though, the great United States of America in dealing with a disaster down in Katrina had the problem. And then when persons left and looking for somewhere, they don't have shelters. They go to a big mega church. You see the man who heads that church comes on television on Sundays. He's a very good preacher. I have no doubt he's a holy man. But on this dangerous road to Jericho, on which we are all walking, metaphorically, they closed the doors on those persons who to come in. Closed the doors. The church there in that rich country behaved like how the Levites and the lawyers were dealing with the man who was robbed and injured on that dangerous road to Jericho in the book of Luke. And the Good Samaritans in St. Vincent and Grenadines, the churches, the individuals, all about people who open their homes, the churches who open their doors, all the religious denominations. So sometimes when we pull ourselves down, it is good to look back, to look sideways, to look in front, to make all the relevant comparisons. Now, to get to your question, we have returned, yes, to normalcy in many respects, but then there are a number of people who are still not living normal lives. We have just about, I suspect at the moment, close to 100 or thereabouts of persons in shelters here and there. Some of them are not SOFRI related. Some of them took advantage subsequent to the SOFRI and moved into some of these places because naturally they feel if they stay there, they will have a forced call on the new houses which are being built. And some of them want to get free meals. Some go elsewhere, you know, buy their home and come to the shelters. So there's still some lack of normalcy there. And some old people were left in the shelters by their families and haven't gone for them, and we have to take care of them. That's the nature of this situation. And then there's some persons we had to, all told, we have to repair a number, 600 and something houses, and we have to build 100 plus. And we haven't done all of them. We have done up to last week, Wednesday, I got a count. We have done over 400. Red Cross has helped some people, and some people have fixed their houses and the like. We are building 27, they're completing them at Orange Hill. Montgomery Daniel has 24 units which he's dealing with for old people, some temporary units in Sandy Bay. We are working with the Mustique Company on they have agreed to help with us to fund 41 new houses. These are, because you see, the houses have been damaged. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. From level 1 is the smallest damage, going right up to level 4. And then there are some houses which were completely destroyed. And some which were not completely destroyed or even damaged severely, but which we have to move from the Lahar valleys because the valleys have been widened. So those have to be dealt with. And 1 or 2 river crossings, which we have cleaned, which we have to put in at least temporary Bailey bridges, so that there is a return to substantially normal life, but it is not complete yet. What we have seen, though, in the area of agriculture, well, Bragsa and other teams did a fantastic job in cleaning up the ash. And once the farmers were back, in conjunction with the Ministry of Agriculture, with support systems, they started to plant back. And the weather has been good. Teresa, we are producing so much fruits and vegetables. Tomatoes are, people are almost giving away tomatoes. If you drive about the countryside, you will see it's like Christmas. You see the green. A lot of greenery, but under them you see the red tomatoes or the orange colored ones. And the farmers naturally are complaining about the price which traffic has given them for certain commodities, because there is a glut in some matters, in some commodities. And at the same time, we are seeing the increase in prices of inputs, particularly fertilizer, where the prices have gone up markedly, and we are working out some further subsidies, because we always subsidize the fertilizer. But the numbers, like for instance, a shipment came just over a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and on a 100-pound sack, it increased by $47. You know, Teresa? So, and that had to do, some of that happened because of factors prior to the military aggression in Ukraine, and some as a consequence of that. And we haven't seen the end of those price rises yet. So there is, yes, in many respects, normal. Children are back at schools. We did tremendous renovations of the schools. The school in Sandy Bay, the secondary school, which was destroyed. We rebuilt a wall replacement one, temporarily. But that one was built in about 10, 12 weeks. Remarkable, done by in the Gonsalves area, Black Point area. But we will build a replacement school for that one at Orange Hill. We are right now, we have a $40-something million project where we're doing 9 schools. 8 of them we're repairing substantially. And the one we have to build, we put out for the expressions of interest, for the design and the like. But we had, additionally, we built the 2 temporary ones in Annisville, where grammar school and high school are located, because we are repairing grammar school and high school substantially. We did the same thing down in Beckway at the community high school. Right now, the two primary schools in Barley are being substantially renovated, and so on and so forth. We had to keep giving monies to relief efforts during that humanitarian phase. And that continues. And in fact, just last week in Cabinet, we approved for the WFP, the World Food Program, to provide an additional 1 month, one-off $400 payment to 3,702 families in the region of $1.5 million.
Prime Minister, when we come back, I wanted to continue to talk about the support, the financing, and the role of NEMO when we come back from this, our second break. Back in just a moment.
Here's your chance to win even more from the National Lotteries Authority when you play for 2 times daily. Choose phone numbers from 0 to 9 and you can win up to $5,000 with a $1 inline bet.
Make 4 and back it up too. That's right. There'll be lots of cash waiting for you.
Get your tickets Monday to Saturday for the Play 4 midday draw at 1:50 p.m. and the Play 4 night draw 9 p.m. So easy to play.
You'll win even more.
I am King of the Band's winner, Thierry Lockhart. I am urging you to practice social distancing to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Avoid large gatherings, and if you have to stand in a line, make sure you are 3 feet apart from the other person. Get vaccinated today, protect yourself, and be responsible.
And I urge you, get vaccinated. It is safe and it is effective. Stop the spread, help the fight, and make the choice that is right. And let us unite and do the thing right. Man and woman, let us join in the fight.
Welcome back. Prime Minister, before the break, you were talking about some extension in funding from the WFP, I think it was. One of the questions I'd like to ask you is, how is a crisis, how are emergencies financed? Where do the funding come from? I know there was a lot of talk about souffre money and that sort of thing. How is it done? What happens during times like these?
Fine, let me just give an indication of some of the monies which we spent also. From the month of May, we started, in addition to WFP came in a little later, but our own resources kicked in. And we gave farmers support for every month, the $500 money we gave fisher folk too. Farmers, particularly in the red zone and the orange zone, but also the yellow and green zone got some. Then vendors of different types, minibuses, people involved in tourism, then the workers. Remember, we gave all this money both through the NIS and also through the central government for those workers who were laid off and who had lost some level of income, including about 1,200 seafarers, sailors who came back from the cruise ships. They also got the $300 a month. So there were millions of dollars spent. Now, there wasn't a lot of money granted by the agencies to give to the government. The government received monies like from some governments. St. Kitts gave $1 million, Barbados $500,000. But people gave a lot of, so we got some monies, but people gave a lot of materials. a lot of supplies. But you remember this, we had set up a contingency fund where we had at least $40 million in it put aside. Then we had $54 million from a World Bank, a $20 million loan which was there, a very soft loan, 40-something years, which we had to pay it back at 0.5 percentage point interest, which we had already negotiated. But rather than spending that in 2020, which was an election year, I said, let us put that aside, and we put that aside at the World Bank in an account called the Catastrophic Deferred Drawdown Option, in shortened form, CAT-DDO, to draw down just in case you have any disaster. Because, you know, the temptation in an election year is to pluck the chicken. You know, politicians love to pluck the chicken in an election year. And sometimes at the end, by the time the election finish, the chicken is plucked of all its feathers, that the chicken is bare and the chicken dying. But I'm an experienced man, and I know that plucking the chicken ain't winning your election. People ain't foolish. They judge you on other things. And we kept that money up. I kept that money separate. Then we got soft loans from the World Bank. We got a very soft one from the IMF. We got a $5 million US soft loan from the CDB. But the CDB didn't disburse the money yet. They said that you can spend and get it back. So I kind of do a bridging loan for that now until I get it back from the CDB. So I'll have money in hand. So, but fundamentally, we kept things going because of the resilience and social solidarity of our people, generosity by our regional family and the global community, and because of the way in which the government had organized its affairs. It's very critical to always remember this. And it happens so easily. I mean, you get people who will tell you, boy, the man you really want to have a wrong when you have a disaster is the comrade. Because the way in which we make it look so easy, it's not easy, but you just have to keep a level head, plan properly, and you know where to tap for various sources. But while we are doing all that, Teresa, remember this. We have to comply with the law of the land. When Sofre blew on 9th of April, it was just 3 months and 1 week, 13 weeks since we had presented the budget for 2021. But we had to reopen that budget and put more money in it. And that's why by the 7th of May, we were in Parliament with a supplementary estimates and a supplementary appropriation bill, increasing the extent of the expenditure which had been approved in January by over 13%, $100 and something million additional. Just think of this, Teresa. You're managing all what you're managing, day to day. But yet, you have to be putting the bills together, the laws together, the numbers together with the public servants to get supplementary appropriation, supplementary estimates and supplementary appropriation bill. And I'll tell you this. When we did that on the 9th, the 7th of May, by the 9th of May, all those bills which we dealt with on that special session on May the 7th were on the law books, assented to by the Governor General, published in the Gazette in order to operate those laws. You make it look easy, but it's just that the amount of work is Herculean. And in all of this, while this is happening, fortunately we built a structure like Nemo.
Which we'll talk about some
yes,
more.
And all the volunteers and all the rest. And then I have to be getting reports, I have to be visiting to make sure that that is good, the ministers, and people want to see you in the shelters. But in addition to all of those things, we have all that administrative and legal and political work to be doing and interfacing with the international community and the regional community, meetings with the OECS, with CARICOM, with the World Bank, with separate governments, with the IMF, with the British, organizing with the Red Cross, which did a tremendous job, World Central Kitchen, all the churches, and people want you to come and see what they're doing.
How would you say the support mechanisms regionally, locally, and internationally worked during this period of crisis?
Pretty well, some naturally more than others. The work which we had done with the United Nations over the years and also on the Security Council, within 24 hours, the Secretary General of the United Nations, my brother Antonio Guterres, former Prime Minister of Portugal, called me. He said, Ralph, I hear about this thing and so on, give me a report. I gave him. He said, look, I put all the agencies at your disposal, call on them. I began to work very closely, not only with the center at the United Nations, but Didier Trebok. And by the way, just before I came here, Didier was not feeling well in Barbados. He's a resident UN rep in Barbados. He was in the hospital. He's okay. But I called him to find out how he's doing. Teresa, important human relations, you know. He's touched because I'm concerned about his welfare. And he had been a friend of ours, and he's a friend of ours. The global relations also were quite well. And even though you had people, remember when the British government first of all said £200,000, and people were wanting me to criticize the British government, say it's too small a sum and all the rest. Channel 4 came down here and interviewed me. We went on a tour there. The journalist pressed me 4 times on that. And on each occasion, I said, whatever little we get, we are grateful. And I am sure that the British government, with whom we have a good partnership, would work with us more efficaciously to do other things. This is only one phase. There are other phases. Prince Charles had been in touch with me. He and I spoke. I said, well, listen, I know you're helping with the Red Cross. You need to send some more personnel down here to help the Red Cross, because some resources come into the Red Cross, which the Red Cross would use. I said, but you and I had spoken in 2019 about reparations when he visited here, and scholarships. I said, well, I parked the issue of reparations aside for the time being now. Let's talk about some scholarships for Vincentians. Within a week, the University of Wales Trinity St. David, the Vice Chancellor, called me. He said, what you were thinking about? I said, well, you know, I had told Prince Charles any number between 50 and 70. The Vice Chancellor said, what about 55? I said, 55 is fine. 40 undergraduates, 15 graduates. That's how these things, you see, Teresa, you have to be very proactive and you have to look for opportunities. But all the time you must remember, you have to work through the organs of the government, through the parliament, to the various institutions, because all the control mechanisms have to be in place. All the expenditure controls. things have to be accounted for, audited, all these things. And then I come back again and said, NEMO, the Health Services Subcommittee of NEMO, because they're dealing with COVID at the same time. The private sector, everybody. And NEMO stood the test. Of course, there are areas we could improve upon, but they did a remarkable work. The public servants whom we transferred over to NEMO to help, and teachers, and the volunteers which came in. You remember I began with number one, the resilience and solidarity of our people. You notice how when you asked me all what was involved? And I came down the line and talked about solidarity to the regional family, the global community, and things that we ourselves as the government did and how we organized and did this. But all that can't happen unless the people are resilient and there's social solidarity. Of course, okay, there was a little dissonance here and there, and even in the midst of that, some people want to play politics. I tell my guys, who want to play politics, let them go and play politics. Those are the fellas. Just do the work of the people, and people will see who's serious.
Okay, we'll take our final break. When we come back, we're going to talk some more about the role of NEMO and how you see them fulfilling their mission for which they were set up in 2002 when we come back.
Band leader of Lynx Mass Band, Band of the Year winner 2019. I'm urging you to practice proper hand washing to curb the spread of COVID-19. When you're able to wash your hands, use soap and water to clean your hands thoroughly. Get vaccinated today. Protect yourself and be responsible.
Listen to me and I urge you, get vaccinated. It is safe and it is effective. Stop the spread, help the fight, and make the choice that is right. And let us unite and do the thing right. Man and woman, let us join in the fight.
Welcome back to our final segment for this evening's program. You can still contribute to the talk if you wish by sending your questions to our Facebook or YouTube pages. Prime Minister, when you set up NEMO in 2002, you took it as a personal mission. This was the first experience in respect of a volcanic eruption, this sort of response to something that was not a storm, it was not a hurricane, but it was a first experience managing an eruption. Would you say, and it did get a lot of flack, I mean every day you would hear, but how would you say they fared at the end of the day?
Oh, NEMO did extremely well. NEMO has a good legislative institutional base. We have a good central leadership, and we have a number of subcommittees and technical committees in which we bring in a lot of other people, including volunteers. And NEMO over the years have been doing training of people, making sure that we prepare a lot for hurricanes and storms, tsunamis, but we also did preparatory work for volcanoes. Of course, you can prepare, but when it comes, is a story different, but you have to apply what you prepare and what you learn. And Michelle Forbes did a very good job. The WFP helped us in setting up a good informational infrastructure. I know that there are persons who would have had criticism about this. They're trying to get that, they can't get that, but any one day, NEMO was dealing with thousands of individual things. And information will come in on the telephone. Sometimes the information may be passed to the correct person to be dealt with. Maybe it didn't get passed to the correct person to be dealt with. So sometimes you had a delay. But take note of the fundamental questions. You went by the shelters, you find people with mattresses and you find people with cots. You find people with overwhelming food. Just think of this. Every single day, you had at one time, over 7,000 persons in the shelters. That means 21,000 meals per day. 7,000 breakfast, 7,000 lunch, 7,000 dinner, and also a snack. That's not an easy job, Teresa. The carrying of the supplies, and you have to make sure that you account for the supplies too. The people to do the cooking, the serving and doing all these things on time. And you also had volunteers also doing cooking and bringing in food. World Central Kitchen came in and they delivered food directly to people also going outside in other homes and the like. Food packages. Thousands upon thousands of food packages. Then, I'm not a few thousand, Teresa. Then you had Sabota Caesar with his very innovative love boxes, those care boxes. You remember those with agricultural produce? Because it helped to some farmers who couldn't sell their products. So we bought and we distributed. It's a remarkable story. And this Seismic Resource Center. I've just written a very strong supporting recommendation for the SRC to be considered for in monitoring volcano terms, one of the highest awards which is possible to get in the world. Because without them, their heroism, it was a magnificent collective effort, and our Caribbean civilization should be very proud. We didn't have time tonight, this evening, Teresa, to talk about the recovery era. And another time I can come back and talk about we talk a lot about humanitarian and production supports and but there's a whole program of recovery, rebuilding better and stronger. But beyond that, I look for a word to encapsulate it. Recovery, rebuilding better, stronger, involves production, involves the physical. But this thing is existential. You have to capture a spirit in it. And the concept, the word I was looking for is an old word in disuse. You could look it up, respair, R-E-S-P-A-I-R. This is a time of fresh hope. That's what respair means. And this hope is conjoined with faith. And faith is made manifest in works. And the other of the trilogy with hope and faith is love, which is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken, looks on hurricanes and volcanoes, is never shaken. And this spirit, today, for instance, St. Vincent and the Grenadines beat the women, beat the BVI women 5-1. People gather at the stadium, at the facility. That's part of repairing. Lifting our spirit. Last week, Sunday, well, Sunday just gone here, 7,000 people gather with the VPL. If you looked at that, you see people want to have a release. Can you imagine what this carnival is going to be like? Yeah? Tomorrow, when people are saying, well, should we have the facility? Should we have sports? I said, no, we must have the sports. And the Humble African, Gustus, and Curtis King with the schools and all the other supporting staff. Tomorrow is the finals for the primary school and Friday for the secondary school. Braxa was down there this evening because I got a message that they want some things to be done to make the field, make the approach a little better, because they didn't have the asphalt, so they have to, the asphalt didn't come in. When I called Camilo, for instance, Camilo was out there, called the man at Braxa. Teresa, you see how all this thing coming together is a time, a period of repair. And meanwhile in the churches, people are praising God. On Sunday, we are having a Thanksgiving service at the Kingston Baptist Church, just up the road here, just across from Nemo. That is all part of this time of repair, of fresh hope, of faith made manifest in works, and love, which is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests, looks on hurricanes and volcanoes and storms, and is never shaken. As we build back better and stronger, but not just in that physical, which is important, in the housing and the roads and the bridges and the agriculture and what is happening with fisheries, but also in our spirit and in our faith and our love. It is a wonderful time to be in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and watch how these things are happening. And that is why in this context, I also ask those teachers, those people at the port, customs, immigration, who didn't take the vaccine. You see, there's not a problem with the vaccine. Take it. In faith and in love and in solidarity and with a fresh hope for our country and our future. And I'd like to talk to you about some of the details in that on another time.
Perfect note on which to end this evening's program. There's so much we could talk this evening, but as usual, not enough time. But you'll come back Remember, all during this month of April, we will be talking and reflecting on the eruption of La Soufrière and the 1 year anniversary of that event. Thank you so much for joining us again, Prime
you.
Minister, as usual. Next week, we will have Ministers Brewster and James as our guests on the program. Thank you for joining us once again. We'll see you again next week, Wednesday, at the same time. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Ken Isaacs and I'm employed with Fantasy Tours. And about 2 weeks ago, I took the vaccine. The reason why I took it is because the business I'm in, the tourism sector, I know these cruise industries, the cruise lines, they're gonna need for us in the tourism sector to have it. And for tourism to really pick up back in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I see the necessity for it.
Virus in our place and do not procrastinate, but rather let us vaccinate. Get vaccinated today. Let us unite and do the thing right.
My name is Hugh Stewart, Managing Director of Farm Consulting Limited. Most farmers